Hello, sir. Heard you wanted to see me.
I'd like to say welcome. Welcome to Illyria. Welcome, 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 welcome to Illyria.
Hello, listening people.
Hello.
You're listening to Spit and Polish Presents Pictures Powwow. I am one of your hosts, Ryan Swinski.
And I'm Bartek.
Bartek, welcome. I can't remember how he sung it, but he sung a song of welcome in this movie, David Cross.
You got the lyrics right.
Bartek, it is great to be back. We are doing our show Pictures Powwow, our weekly show. How does it feel to do a weekly show?
You know what? For the last 5 years, I still didn't know the answer, but within the last 5 minutes, I think I like it.
You think you like it? On a weekly basis, do you like it?
I think I finally enjoy the podcast.
Good. I am enjoying myself, obviously. We are doing Pictures Powwow, which is always a pick-me-up to say Pictures Powwow. And that is our show in which we talk about a movie that's come recommended. This week, we are doing a Listening People's suggestion. That's right, you listening people. You can suggest movies. We have an email address and social media in which you can direct all those suggestions to. This week, we are doing the 2006 film She's the Man, which was suggested by one of your friends, was it not, Bartek?
Yes, Jono, who was our guest in the Green Hornet episode.
Do you know why he suggested this?
No. I think I can ask him afterwards, though.
It's just one of those things where I just didn't expect Jono to suggest She's the Man, especially when it's like one of your other friends who happens to be a girl suggested a movie as well, but like she suggested like a regular normal film. Well, Jono's like, I'm going to specifically request this very, very, very directed at teenage girls film, She's the Man.
Yeah, I coincidentally, after you picked it, I happened to see him like I think later that day, and I told him, no, it was a few days later, and I told him, yeah, we're doing She's the Man, and he was like really pumped about it.
I'm pumped, Jono, because I have now watched She's the Man for the first ever time. But before we get into all of our histories, listening people, if you have not seen the 2006 cinematic masterclass, dare I say unappreciated masterpiece, She's the Man, give it a watch, because we are going to be talking about it in depth. And yes, this movie has depth. So if you don't want to get spoiled for all the amazing plot details, character turns, actors that turn up, all of that, because we are going to be talking about this. Bartek, I just revealed that this is the first time I have seen this movie. I revealed it last week, and I revealed it in our very first episode when I said that Big Fat Liar was the only thing Amanda Bynes has been in that I've seen. So it's not a big shock, but this is my first viewing of the film She's the Man. This is my more education for me and Amanda Bynes. Both her and I are learning at the same time. This is my third Amanda Bynes entry, as we found out at the end of the last episode. She was apparently in the movie Robots, which I have seen, but I do not remember her in it.
Yep.
Cinematic classic Robots. Should we be talking about Robots? Fun fact, listeners, this is also a double review of Robots, even though I haven't rewatched it.
Fun fact, a few months ago, my brother said, hey, you should do Robots.
Well, I didn't see it in our listening people's suggestions, so
well,
I
yeah,
guess
I didn't take it seriously, but that's my problem, I guess.
Yeah, your brother always says things in a non-serious tone, so it's kind of hard to take him seriously. Oscar, you got to work on that, okay, buddy?
Yeah. His friend and him had just seen Robots, and I think the DVD's still sitting in the lounge room.
Bartek, your history, yes. What is it?
She's the Man. I'd seen most of it before, but then we stopped watching it for some reason. So, the context behind that was back in year 11, I went to an all-boys school that was pretty much right next to an all-girls school, and I did a school production with them, which was Picnic at Hanging Rock. And after...
Were you the rock?
Yes. I was hanging a lot. It was really awkward.
How many boys are in Picnic at Hanging Rock? Isn't that a thing about just a bunch of girls wandering around in the woods?
I think the answer is somewhere, but I think the answer is 6.
Okay. Okay.
So there's two detectives, there's two normal guys, and there's a doctor and someone else, but I can't remember who.
Okay. Go on
Any,
with your amazing story.
yeah, sorry, I got on a tangent there. Yeah, so after that was all done, there were two, I guess, little party gatherings that happened within like the months after it, where some of us were like, "Hey, we enjoyed hanging out. Let's meet up at my place and we'll do party stuff or whatever." They were very small scale, but in one of them, the girl who was hosting was like, "Hey, let's watch She's the Man," and for some reason we only watched roughly like half to three-quarters of it. And I remember we were all having a pretty good time. I don't know what called it off. The last thing I remember is I think we might have stopped around the time a tampon was put in someone's nose.
That's not even halfway through. If it's the first time, or is that later in the movie?
The time when Channing Tatum does it. So like the payoff to it being introduced. So yeah, I don't know why we stopped watching it, but I remember people were having a good time with it.
I know exactly why you stopped watching it, Bartek. Because
Yeah?
another person needed to put on Catch That Kid. That's a reference to that episode
Yep.
of the show in which one of your friends back in the day, that was like their favorite movie, right?
It seemed like it because it was two separate birthday parties where the movie that they decided to put on was Catch That Kid.
Catch That Kid. I will tell the listening people this, and you, Bartek. I knew the premise of this movie, of course. We all knew the premise, which is girl wants to be in soccer team, isn't allowed, pretends to be a boy to do the thing, right?
Yeah.
And it's obviously an adaptation loosely of Shakespeare. And you guess which one, listening people. Hint, hint, it's not Macbeth. But I did not know anything else other than one thing, which was the reveal that she's a girl, which was very iconic. Like, I think that's probably the most iconic thing in the movie that transcends you having never seen the movie, is the iconic, like, she lifts her top up and everyone's like, oh, she's a girl. Like, that's it. I didn't know Channing Tatum was in it until I had to get a copy of the movie and it had a list of the cast and Channing Tatum was referenced. And I was like, oh, is this where he came from? The answer is, Bartek, okay, do you remember that time where we lived in a world where we didn't know who Channing Tatum was and now we live in a world where we know who he is?
Yeah.
Where did he come from? Like, what's the thing that he came from? Like, what's the movie?
It's a good question because the way that I learned about him was I started, like, I guess, listening to internet reviews. And I think I hadn't really heard of him until, like, the early 2010s. So the fact that when I was watching the film and I saw his name in the opening credits, I was like, oh, 2006, isn't that before Channing Tatum?
I thought it was Magic Mike or 21 Jump Street, but the answer is the Step Up movies. He's the guy from Step Up. Who knew? Not me. I've only seen the second one halfway through. But I was surprised to see him. I was doubly surprised to see David Cross. And I immediately said, if he's not her dad, he's definitely going to be the school principal. And I was right about the school principal. I was even more delighted to see that her mum was played by Julie Haggerty, who you may remember as Isla Fisher's mother in Confessions of a Shopaholic.
She did seem familiar, yeah.
And Airplane. She's the girl in Airplane. Or as we call it, Flying High in Australia for some inexplicable reason. She's the lead in that. I remember saying that in Confessions of a Shopaholic, and I bet you I could play your audio reaction and it would be the same okay kind of response. And most people would know this actress as the main woman from Flying High, or as America knows it, Airplane.
Okay. Pleasant surprise.
A pleasant surprise. She's always great to see when she pops up. People might recognize her more recently from the film Marriage Story, in which she played Scarlett Johansson's mum. And before you ask, Bartek, yes, I proceeded to look up the age difference between Scarlett Johansson and Amanda Bynes to see if it was feasible that this actress could play their mum. Scarlett Johansson is 2 years older, so it is feasible that Scarlett Johansson and Amanda Bynes can have the same actress play their mother in a film, okay? I know You are asking that, Bartek. You're always saying, Ryan, did you do your homework on this? Did you look up who invented the apostrophe or whatever it was? The
It was the
asterisk?
semicolon.
Semicolon in Big Fat Liar, like Will. So I looked that up, but I knew nothing about the movie's actual intent. I thought this movie was going to be far more leaning towards a tale about overcoming prejudice and sexism primarily, and that's really kind of not what this movie is about primarily. Like, that's in there, but
Yeah,
I
it
wouldn't
leans
say
into
that's
it
what it's
sometimes.
about.
Yeah.
It's about getting a boy.
As they all do.
As you do, and the boy's Channing Tatum. So, Bartek, having now seen this as a full-grown adult man, and having
Yes.
seen it partway through as a teenage boy, how did it feel?
Yeah, I think it really started picking up once she started dressing as a boy. For sure.
So,
The
so
film-
5 minutes in.
5 minutes in, yeah. The first 4 minutes 59, I think they were a bit slow.
Not the opening credit sequence?
Well, the way that I watched the film was on an Australian streaming service called Stan.
Very famous.
Yes, I'd never seen anything on Stan before, so this was my popping of the Stan cherry.
Mine was Twin Peaks: The Return, by the way. Yeah, when that was airing.
Yeah. So the opening sequence, which is filled with a lot of sports, playing soccer on the beach. I think all the movements of that and Stan still not fully booting up or something just made it a literal blur to me. It was hard to read some of the credits, but I got through a lot of the bigger font things, like Channing Tatum's in this, David Cross, Vinnie Jones. So I had that going for me. I could read some words.
And did it get better?
It eventually got a little bit better, yeah, but never to like Netflix quality.
So it was just low res, huh?
For the first half, it was pretty consistently low res.
Did the streaming service Stan name itself after the Eminem song?
I don't know if it does. That term's become a rather popular one on the internet lately.
Even with Eminem, where he had to be on Saturday Night Live to let us all know, I wrote Stan. That's a thing that happened.
Yeah, the Stan, my brother's the one that owns it. I actually went up to him and was like, hey, do you still have Stan? And then that's how I watched it. And he was coming in and out during like the first 3 minutes of the room just when I was watching it. And even he was shocked at how bad it was and how long it was taking to get good.
But other than your issues with the streaming service quality, that's not the film's fault. What did you think of the film?
Yeah, like I said, when it starts with the main premise that she's dressing up as a boy in the old boys' school, I think that's where it started picking up. But as you say, that is very early on. And I think it was a little bit better than I was expecting.
You had low expectations by the sound of it then?
I wouldn't say too low. I think they were in the middle, but it was just a little bit better than the middle. I was expecting it, to be a film mostly targeted at girls. I forgot most of the premise, and so when I forgot about the whole soccer thing. I forgot the reason why she was dressing as a boy in the first place. So when that got into the picture, my immediate thought was, okay, so it's been established that she's apparently better than half the boys in the team. And then when she starts trying out, she seems to not be doing so well, so I was a bit confused about what was going on there. But in terms of most of the comedy moments, I think they were played out suitably well.
Yeah. So this is my first time viewing it, and what I can say is this is a definite unappreciated masterpiece. But the issue with an unappreciated masterpiece is sometimes a first viewing can be a little bit hard because there's just some elements that you're like, this second viewing will make that gloss nicer for me. Like swallow it down nicely. There was many episodes where we had movies like that once we started doing a commentary over, because that would be the second or maybe even third time we had seen the movie, we had each other and a guest or whatever, those troubling issues that you have upon a first watch kind of smoothed out. And I feel like if I saw this another one or two more times, I reckon I would have as much of an infatuation with this movie that other people do. Upon a first viewing, there were some teething issues that I had, some tonal issues, some jokes that I didn't think worked, and some forced character drama, and not really following through on some plot elements that I thought could have been more.
Yeah.
But overall, I have a love-hate relationship, weirdly enough, because there was moments where I just kept saying, I hate this. And then there was moments where I'm like, that was great. I love this. So the film definitely got an emotional reaction out of me. And, some films, that's enough. A lot of films that I don't like, one of the big reasons that I don't like them is I don't get engaged emotionally. And this film did engage me emotionally, even in ways I was just going, no, shut up. But I was engaged. And this film was very, very funny. Not all of it was funny, but there was just striking things in there that I just felt like, for me, I wish that it leaned into more of a wacky tone throughout the film instead of having it randomly in there. I wish that this had more of a tonal similarity to Jennifer's Body or to Mean Girls. This kind of didn't have it as consistently.
Yeah, it felt like whenever I did laugh, it was kind of like an unexpected sucker punch. Like, oh, a joke that I like.
Did you have a particular standout moment that caught you off guard?
I don't know about moment, but I remember with one of the David Cross scenes where they just overheard the main character talking over the phone about very feminine things right after
wearing high heels, yeah.
Wearing high heels and basically patriarchy thing about it, and then him trying to play it off as that's normal.
Have you ever had to try and run away in heels? And he's like, no. He's like, it's not easy.
It's not easy.
My thing that caught me off guard more than David Cross, who looks exactly like that guy who has that TV show in which he basically talks nothing about. He just talks about cats. That cat therapist TV show, man. I'll put a picture of him on the social media and compare the two. Bartek, I'll send you one after, and you'll be like, he does look like that cat guy.
I'm curious, yeah.
One that caught me off guard was the sycophant character, the stalkery boy guy, Malcolm, I think his name was. And I thought at first, I was caught off guard. I was like, oh, maybe the thing that caught me off guard was the fact he has a pillow with her face on it. And I thought, oh, that's extreme. But what caught me off guard was the fact that he wasn't just talking to himself. He was specifically talking to his pet spider. And that... I didn't expect that. And to be honest, his character never really matched that scene throughout the movie. You get a specific idea of how creepy this guy is, but I never felt like he truly followed through on that level of creep that he did in that specific scene. But that really caught me off guard, and I was laughing hysterically at that.
Malvolio the spider.
And then next he's like, his spider's missing, he's handing out missing posters for it. I just didn't expect it.
Yeah, his character was an odd one for the film. It's like when he's first introduced, it seems to just be as a stickler for the rules kind of thing, but then he becomes jealous, but then there's not much focus on him, but then you get moments like that where he is kind of trying to be the antagonist. And I didn't know if that was the joke or not.
I kept thinking that this universe, the school next door, was the one from Jennifer's Body, and David Cross and J.K. Simmons' cars were next to each other as they drove off at the end of school. And meanwhile, across town, that Malcolm character, his best friend is that redhead guy from Vampire Academy. That's what I was thinking of. Meanwhile, his best friend is the redhead best friend, friend zone guy in Vampire Academy. That's what I was thinking of.
These schools are in the unappreciated masterpieces town.
It's that universe. Yeah. Well, this film has Big Fat Liar universe in itself because not only is Amanda Bynes in the film, but the girl that the real brother Sebastian was dating and then of dumps at the end of the movie, she was Frankie Muniz's older slutty sister in Big Fat Liar.
Yeah, we also have 2 Year One actors in it.
Do go on.
David Cross and Vinnie Jones.
Exactly. Thank you. I keep getting reminded that Vinnie Jones is here. Vinnie Jones, the football player, the soccer player. He's in this movie.
They made him call it soccer in this, didn't they?
He had to swallow it. He had to swallow it down, didn't he? You could tell he was fuming.
Yeah.
I did find this movie a bit head scratching at points. To talk more about positives, Bartek, we should talk about David Cross. You are not as familiar with David Cross as I am. I think it seems like, from my experience, your familiarity with David Cross is me having movies on this show that happen to have him in there.
That, and he was in San Andreas. GTA San Andreas, that is.
He was a voice in that.
Yeah.
Was he a nerd in that, or dweeb?
Yeah, he ran a store selling remote control toys, I guess.
Obviously, you have not seen him in his most iconic of roles, Arrested Development.
No.
You would love him in that show. David Cross can only play one character, and that character is Tobias from Arrested Development, and he just plays different shades of that character. And in this movie, it's basically Tobias from Arrested Development, but with a beard instead of a moustache. And I loved David Cross in this. He was the right level of zany and wacky. He
had some really great lines.
You know what I also think of? His mentor was the principal from Major Payne, the one that liked bugs.
Right.
Yeah. And their mother, both of them, they both have a grandmother, an elderly figure, who's that old lady from the tuxedo who takes over the hospital speakers. But you've seen David Cross in these things. He's played varying different levels of crazy. I think year one's probably his most normal, and he was Kane in that. Like, he was probably most grounded in that. While in Pootie Tang, he had to play Pootie Tang.
That's right, he was in that for a bit.
What did you think of him in this?
Yeah, he definitely is one of the things I remembered most from my, fractured viewing. I remember we had a guy in the group watching it with us who, like, every time David Cross came on, he, like, chuckled to himself, shook his head, but, like, he was, like, really enjoying him every time he showed up. So I remember that there was a zany principal in this, but I didn't remember who he was played by, and I didn't quite remember what he looked like, but as soon as I saw him in this film for this viewing, I was like, there he is, that's the guy. And it's David Cross. This is excellent.
Did you have any other favorite David Cross moments? Because there's one in particular I said, Bartek, that's a Bartek gag that he would like.
I did like that later in the film, I think during the soccer game, when he had the megaphone, there would be a lot of moments where, like, the focus isn't on what he's saying, but if you listen closely, you can still hear him trying to, like, mumble out a sentence, trying to get attention. Big moments, most of them I think were really great. In terms of a standout one, my mind is kind of slipping.
Okay. The standout moment for me, a visual gag, is him wearing a hairnet. And I thought Bartek would love that.
Oh,
gag.
right. That's right.
And then later he's like, I'm thinning at the top. Like, he's completely bald. Even more bold than David Cross usually was at that period of time. Like, in Arrested Development, he has hair. Like, it's short and he's balding, but, like, he has it.
I did notice that, yeah.
But I thought you would really love that gag. I was like, that's a Bartek type gag. And him with the speaker in general was also very good. The classic, he's a girl. That whole thing reveal at the end, the false reveal, the fake reveal, the screwed up reveal. I thought that was very comedically timed David Cross with that nerdy voice and his absolute confidence in what he's saying. That's the power of David Spade. I keep saying David Spade. David Cross, sorry. David Cross has an unflappable confidence in his characters that is, that's the humor there. In Arrested Development, his character is really naive, and he always speaks these dirty double entendres without ever realizing it. And there's a whole episode where they go, you just got to listen to yourself. Just record yourself, listen back, and you'll hear it. And at the end of the episode, you see him, and he's listening to all the dirty things that he's said throughout the whole episode, and he's just like, Yep, that sounds completely fine to me. That makes sense. Like, he's just like, he completely doesn't get it. And that's always the power of him as a performer. He does unflappable ignorance and confidence combined very nicely. Because he plays pathetic characters, and sometimes pathetic characters are funny, but they can also be awkward. Well, David Cross, I don't find him particularly awkward because of how unflappable he is in his confidence of himself.
Yeah, I think, awkwardness in those kind of characters kind of comes from their self-awareness of how they are.
There's a character in Arrested Development who's a bit more awkward and cringy, and he's the brother Buster, and because that character's a little bit more aware of what a loser they are. But David Cross, I wasn't expecting him to be as funny as he was, but he was a saving grace of this movie. He was a delight every time he came on, and I was happy he was here, and he seemed like he wanted to be here for this.
The podcast?
Yeah, for the podcast, but for this movie, this silly little movie that's for children, sometimes he can phone things in a bit, looking at the Alvin and the Chipmunks movies, for example. Even though he's great in that because his character's an asshole and he's like, it's always great. But David Cross really, really nailed it for me. Were there any other particular actors or comedy moments that really stuck out to you?
I think the main thing with the comedy in this film is the main thing that I can compliment is there's a lot of, I guess, duality or like double meaning stuff that they do, and you were tying into that with the Dave Cross speech at the end where he's playing the "she's the girl" thing. The big thing there, well, not the major big thing, but one of the things there is that at this point, the actual brother who Amanda Bynes is impersonating is at the scene, and he's interpreting the she's a girl thing as like, an insult to him, whereas the actual intention is, revealing the conspiracy, the fake up. And throughout the film, there are a lot of these going on where, and if you watch the trailer for this film, even the trailer voice guy gets in on it, where it plays the tropes of like, oh, I'm gonna make this character jealous by flirting with this character, but the real reason why that character is jealous ties into, the secret behind it. So it's not that character is jealous that the character is flirting with someone else, it's that they like that someone else.
Yeah, that's a strength of the movie for sure. I was going to say the bit where Amanda Bynes' bandage strap got stuck in the drawer. That was pretty funny.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Bartek, sometimes I just love when I ask you, like, what were some other funny moments in the film? You're like, funny moments. Let me tell you about the philosophical thing I got from the film, though.
Well, I mean, it's a comedy film, so I, try to talk about what the comedy that appealed to me was, even if it doesn't answer the question.
I liked, yeah, I agree. That stuff was very good. I wish that her mum was in it more. I like that actress. I liked their dynamic too. Like as actors, they had really good chemistry. And there was a moment in the film where I just said, "Why isn't she here?" Where she goes to the rehearsal meal or whatever it is, and you have that other woman who's in charge of the debutante thing. And I just said, replace that character with her mum. Her mum's already obsessed with it. I think it would have worked better if you just replaced that other woman with her mum, because there was really no difference between the two. They were both elegant society people who were nervy. I think it would have been better if it was just her mum, and then that line where she says, like, Viola, chew like you've got a secret. And then she proceeds to chew like a maniac.
Yeah, her characterization throughout most of the film, I was actually thinking like, oh, it's her mum, but it's not her mum. Why can't it just be her mum?
And I really would have liked it, because her and Amanda Bynes only get a few scenes together, and they have a real great comedic mother-daughter chemistry of, one's ignorant and one's arrogant. And I liked it, and I wish that it was in there more. I wish that she maybe offered up more of a more of a threat to Amanda Bynes keeping up this double identity, because all you really get is the carnival moment, and that's kind of it. And they really don't do much about the trying to juggle the two very much. She has like a couple of moments, but nothing major, because she gets changed in public and very obviously, and no one really interacts. There's no like imminent threat of her getting caught out in between.
Yeah, it's mostly just children.
Yeah, and I thought that was a missed opportunity for sure. Oh, they had the ex-girlfriend trying to get to talk to Sebastian. That was kind of it. But I don't know, I think the mum could have offered more hurdles with the whole debutante thing. Because at the end of the day, the whole debutante thing was there really so that they could have their nice little moment at the end where they're like, yeah, we did it.
Yeah, nice little moment where everyone claps.
Yeah, instead of an antagonistic through line, and what I mean by that, like that whole debutante plot thing serves as its own antagonistic force against our lead because they don't want to be a part of it, and then it's interrupting what they do want to be a part of. I don't often like those kind of things, but I think this movie really could have leaned harder into that. And like I said, I think the mum should have been the lead woman of that instead of this other character who's basically the mum anyway. I think...
not that, yeah, sorry?
Oh, you go on.
Yeah, not that it was necessarily building up to a funny scene, but even at the end when the parents are confronting the two children and, like, you know, they're going to chew them out a bit for what they did, even Amanda Bynes kind of dismisses that scene by being like, look, can we just have dinner later and talk about it?
I know.
It's like something was starting and then there was like no, we'll settle it later when the camera's not rolling.
Yeah, I thought the mum was really funny. I just like her as an actress. She has this really unique voice that's very shaky and nervy. She reminds me, even though she's like tall and slender, just her demeanor and her voice, she reminds me of, like, you know how small mammals, like small dogs, are always kind of shaking because they're so little? She reminds me of that, but as a person. Just like a small dog who's like, you know, how they have that shaking going on. That's what she reminds me of. She just has this vibing effect, like vibration. I don't know. It's just something about her, and I just like seeing her, and I just wanted more of her, you know? I wanted more of her. And the movie didn't give me enough, but what I did get, I did enjoy thoroughly. We've got Vinnie Jones himself, always a pleasure. Little bummed that they didn't give him more comedy stuff to do as well. I felt like he could have been more of an antagonistic force. Like, I don't know. I felt like he could have had more of a presence in the movie at least, but that's also my big issue was I knew the premise, and it didn't follow through on the premise that I thought. I thought there was going to be more of a Bend It Like Beckham thing, where you're going to have soccer games throughout the movie, and she's going to learn that her perception wasn't as apt. She's going to learn that she actually needs to get better as it goes on. So that when she faces her former boyfriend, like, she's also learned a lesson. But the movie, like you said, strangely enough, it's like, no, you're not on the team. And then soccer's kind of not really involved in the movie at all, really, ever. And you're like, this is the whole point, she's here.
Yeah, I read a thing online that, like, was theorizing about why that was the case, and as alright as it was, the fact that the film didn't lean into any, you know, explanations for why she seems to be struggling with soccer, you know, is a demerit against it.
I'm fine with her not getting in at first, and then maybe she has to try and prove herself, but she doesn't really try. She's just, like, training with Channing Tatum, really, to hit on him, and Vinnie Jones just happens to witness it, and he just goes, all right, she's in. Like, it didn't feel like she had really overcome any hurdle. It just kind of felt like Vinnie Jones just happened to see her randomly. It wasn't like she proved herself as a player to earn the right on the team in the same way. It was just kind of like by happenstance. And I felt like...
his two modes were kind of like at first a drill sergeant-y, and then later he was like the woke one. It's like, there's nothing wrong with a girl on the team.
Yeah, exactly. And then he like rips up the book and hands it to him. It's like, we're playing.
Yeah, and there are all these like camera shots of like him looking approvingly, and it's like, this isn't the character that we had.
He's not Vinnie Jones, that's for sure.
It reminded me of Big Fat Liar when they showed like the security guard went to the meeting at the end, and it was like, who is this guy?
Like, we knew who he was, but how did they recruit him? Yeah. I do like this movie more so than I hate it. I think after I watched it, I said, I think I hated this movie because there's just lots of things that just don't appeal to me as a grown adult man. I didn't really care for the will they, won't they. I didn't really care for the character flip of Olivia. At first, Olivia seemed like she had a lot more depth to her and she seemed like a lot nice of a person, but then she herself flips into, like, she willingly decides to flip into being a vapid popular girl character, and it just made me, I didn't really care for her after that. I thought at first she had a lot more interesting stuff going on. She seemed a little bit more nuanced, she seemed a little bit more sensitive, she seemed a little bit smarter than what given credit for, and then they just kind of make her decide,
Genericize her, yeah.
I'm gonna wanna, to get this. And it kind of has the same feeling as Bend It Like Beckham in terms of, and I know this isn't really in this as much as in Bend It Like Beckham, but there feels like there could have been a lesbian romance plot involved in this, but they kind of didn't do it. I don't know.
No, that was for Sorority Boys.
That was not. That was also for Bend It Like Beckham, where there was a feeling like in Bend It Like Beckham, it was originally going to be a more of a overt lesbian plot there, but in the end they didn't do it. Instead, it is.
Didn't Sorority Boys have a thing where one of the female characters thought that she was a lesbian because she fell in love with one of the cross-dressing girls?
You're right. Yeah, so even Sorority Boys had it go there, but like I just felt like this movie kind of had a Bend It Like, more so like Bend It Like Beckham, where Bend It Like Beckham could have but didn't. That's the thing. Sorority Boys went there. That's
they could have had a
difference.
duality. They could have had a duality thing where Channing Tatum can't talk to girls, but then like he can talk to a guy pretending to. Sorry, he can talk to a girl pretending to be a guy. They could have also had a follow-up of when Olivia and Viola were talking about how, when I talk to you, I can really be myself and be honest. But it's like, well, I was a girl all along, and you thought you liked guys, but no.
I also found the diet like they and I get this. This is a film intended for younger audiences. It's also from like 15 years ago now, almost.
Yep.
But like, it felt like the dialogue sometimes was a little too heavy-handed on the nose. I specifically think about David Cross when he comes out of his office to see that Amanda Bynes has now met Olivia for the first time, and that whole interaction was like, meeting the fairer sex, and even that felt too heavy-handedly awkward and cringy and on the nose, even for his character.
I agree. Yeah.
It felt like the script. It didn't feel like it didn't feel like the movie talk. It didn't feel like the story itself. It felt like the script talking to me.
Yeah.
And for a film that I don't think really lent as hard as it could have into the issue of discrimination or sexism or any of that, it kind of felt weird that they really leaned hard on it at points, but then I didn't feel like they leaned on it as a consistent through line throughout the whole entire film.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. Like the moments where Amanda Bynes' constant attempts at, like, talking man talk was kind of shot down by Channing Tatum being like, why do you keep talking about that stuff?
He's a sensitive
Felt
new
like
age
they
guy.
were trying to go. Yeah, they were trying to go for that, but then it's also like, but those are our comedy moments for this comedy film. We have to do it.
And literally the other guys chastise Amanda Bynes for speaking about girls like that as well, and primarily because it's Olivia. She does it. Amanda Bynes does it to begin with, and Channing has a thing for her. So it's like, yeah, but even then, like the black guy and the other guy, like they're fleshed out throughout the story. And I'm not saying that we can't have these jockey dudes be fleshed out at all, but it did feel weird that at points the film would point out the overt sexism, but it didn't feel like the film was truly about that. It was like a kicking off point, right? But I wouldn't say it was the goal. I wouldn't say that, if you're going to watch, like at the end of last week, I was like, we did a movie about racism, let's do one about sexism. But like, I wouldn't say that this film is about sexism. It contains it, but I think I don't know. I just didn't think it was fully about it. I didn't think it committed enough. And I know you could say it's a children's film, or at least for teenagers, but there are plenty that deal with that are aimed at that demographic. I just don't think that's a good enough excuse if you're going to use that.
Yeah, this film's not as good as Saved.
It's not as good as Saved. No, I actually don't think it is. I like Saved more.
No, that's what I mean. Saved is better.
What are some things that you want to talk about with the movie?
I covered the main ones, like the whole duality thing. And you covered a lot of the ones I was going to bring up as well, like how it tries to lean into some things and then kind of backs off at points. Um, yeah, what do I want to talk about now that we've covered those?
Well, you're a fan of sports movies. What did you think of the sport?
Yeah, they kicked the ball real good, and then later on they had a character that can't play soccer, and he's like, "What is this? I don't like this. It's not fun."
Like, I know people can be shit at soccer and all, but like he's like, I don't even know how to kick a ball. And I'm like, what?
Well, according to the trivia, when Amanda Bynes started doing this role, she didn't know much about soccer at all.
Oh, that's what we can talk about, the trivia. The trivia was very interesting.
Yeah.
That's something. Even the trivia is talking about overt sexism more so than the movie, where one of the pieces of trivia was that the
right, I
cast and
remember that.
crew were more comfortable interacting with Amanda Bynes when she was in her male persona, when she was dressed as a guy. But when she was her regular self, they were a lot more sheepish or a lot less inclined to talk to or even be as respectful. And that's interesting, right? Why?
It is, yeah. And then you have that really, the trivia point later where it mentions that like how she looked as a guy apparently was a big factor in her depression or something like that.
Yeah, which is, that's not the fault of the film. That's, she's obviously got some prior issues,
is,
or
yeah.
at least had this kind of lent into some issues with body image or whatever. But again, I don't know much about Amanda Bynes. Just to reinform this for the listening people, I never watched the Amanda Bynes show. I never saw her in other movies. It was just Big Fat Liar, and apparently she's a voice in Robots. But again, I don't remember Robots. So I don't have an attachment to Amanda Bynes. So when I hear all this tragic stuff that has happened to Amanda Bynes, I think she's apparently on the mend now, but I don't know. I don't have like this strong attachment to Amanda Bynes. So it's kind of like when I hear this stuff, I'm just kind of like, well, that's really shitty. Like, like you just hear any information, like, but I don't have like a strong, overwhelming sense like I would if I was a child who grew up with Amanda Bynes. Like if this was, say, like Hilary Duff, I had more of an attachment to Hilary Duff because I like the Lizzie McGuire movie and show and her other movies, like all that Agent Cody Banks and stuff. But with Amanda Bynes, like what I really respected about this was, since this is my second thing around of her being a physical performer, like physically there, I really thought that she did have the comedic chops and the on-screen charisma to carry the film as a lead.
Yeah, I agree.
Because in Big Fat Liars, she's a supporter. Like, I know she's a co-lead, but she's more of a supporting character. It's about Frankie Muniz. And the film in itself, I watched that film not even for Frankie, I watched it for Paul Giamatti. But in this, I was compelled. I was like, I could see why people were fascinated by her. I could see how she could have her own TV show. I could see how she's in movies. I could see why children liked her, because she has this real great energy and she has this real old-fashioned vaudeville type humor.
Yeah, that's right.
She's not I know the trivia has just stated, like, the whole being a boy thing gave her, like, led, or at least was in part of her depression and complex. But and I say this, I guess I have to say it slightly, but what I like is she didn't seem afraid to play around with her goofy features and, like, really accentuate her kind of, like, her weird, goofy eyes and like that zany, crooked smile and all that. Like she didn't seem afraid to really play up those kind of physical things, because she's a very pretty girl and whatnot, but she is a kind of a weird looking girl at the same time. And I think that's partly because she, in this movie and in Big Fat Liar, the two I have seen, she really plays up those things, because in those she likes playing wacky characters.
Yeah. Yeah, I think with a lot of comedy, there is a certain level of, I don't know if this is the right word, but like shamelessness you need to have to just commit fully to a joke.
Humility,
I guess that also kind
yeah.
of ties. Yeah, humility. I don't know that there's many moments in the podcast over the years where I say like a dumb thing and later be like, oh, that was embarrassing, but it was funny at the time, so I guess there was some merit to it or whatever like that.
Like saying your name's Bartek every week. That's embarrassing.
I know, it's Bartłomiej Kasprzak.
I know, right? And you gotta say your middle name in there too, if you're gonna say your full name.
Bartłomiej Piotr Kasprzyszek.
Piotr.
Piotr.
Yeah, I found her very captivating, and I don't think there's many other big movies that she has that are like, Big Fat Liar, and this, and I guess Robots are like the big proper big movies. Would I be wrong in saying that she's in?
I feel like those would be the three.
I know she's in other movies or at least other things, but they weren't as, not as big as these that I can think of.
Yeah, mostly when I think of her, I just think of like a few shows she was on with Nickelodeon, like The Amanda Show. There was another sketch comedy show called All That, and I think she had like a sitcom or two.
Now she has facial tattoos.
Now she's cool.
What did you think of Channing Tatum? I think you're a bit more familiar with him than I am.
A little bit. If I listed out everything I'd seen him in, there probably wouldn't be as much, but I have seen the 21 Jump Street films.
Which I have still not seen those.
Yeah, he was a little bit wooden, but I feel like he had a sort of genuineness to him in this film.
See,
the whole
I was gonna say I'm the exact opposite. I didn't feel any genuineness from him. There was that moment where he's just like talking about like, I care, I have feelings, and I'm like, as if Channing now adjust your pillow. No one sits up there, rests their head on their pillow that way.
Actually, you know what? That's a good point. Lying down on a vertical pillow, so it's on your back like that. That's weird.
And then Amanda, she had her pillows where they were stacked. Like that whole scene is a pillow catastrophe.
This is a universe where pillows are weird.
Yeah. Meanwhile, down the road, people don't look down because it's Baby's Day Out as well. Like, we're gonna keep connecting all these movies together.
Oh, so the town is connected to New York or wherever Baby's Day
Out was set. Sure. I don't know where they were.
New York town.
But I don't know. I didn't buy him, and I think Channing Tatum's a good actor. Like, I've seen the Magic Mike movie. He was actually very good in that. I think I've seen... I liked him in Hail Caesar. He was great in that.
He was.
He's a good actor. Again, I haven't seen 21 Jump Street movies, which I know are the big movies of his, like, if I want to see his comedy chops. But from what I've seen, I have enjoyed. But in this, I just felt like, oh, he's a pretty boy. That's all I felt like. Oh, this is the pretty boy actor.
Yeah.
And I felt like maybe as he's gotten older, he's kind of moved beyond that a little bit. Like, there's still jokes and still things about him being a big bulky dude, but it doesn't feel like, from things I've seen, that him, the actor, the man, is like, I'm sexy. In this, it kind of felt like he was posing a lot and pouting.
Yeah.
I didn't like it.
Yeah, no, comedically he didn't really do all that much in the film. Apparently, I've read in trivia that, like, when he started with modeling, obviously, and he moved out of it because it wasn't challenging enough, so maybe it took him a while to get into acting as well.
And that's good, like, he has improved. And that's the thing I want to say. This movie, other than, say, a few veterans in it, like Amanda Bynes and David Cross and her mother, everyone else, for the most part, are blossoming into things that they will become greater in. Channing Tatum, Vinnie Jones. Like, Vinnie Jones is actually really good now at, like, he's always been pretty decent. Like, he's always just been solid. Like, he's not the greatest actor, but I think he has really blossomed over the years at fine-tuning his comedic persona. Like how...
This was after Eurotrip, though.
I haven't seen Eurotrip. You gotta remember that.
I actually didn't know you hadn't seen Eurotrip.
Yes, you have. I'll play the episodes of the podcast in order. Imagine, I have to listen to every episode and be like, out of the 230 whatever episodes, I have to listen to all of them because every episode feels like you bring up Eurotrip. I've seen Road
I had
Trip.
to put aside Saved by the Bell.
I've seen Road Trip.
Right.
And you haven't, right?
No.
And that's where we go. This is a little dance we do each time. I'm like, I haven't seen Eurotrip, but I have seen Road Trip, and you're like, oh, Rio Trip's great. It's got Matt Damon.
We should do a double. You should do a double episode.
And throw in another trip just for make it a triple. The one with Martin Lawrence taking Raven to college. We'll do that one. College trip.
Triple episode.
And then we do, for the fourth one, Triple X. just to throw it all off. I feel like these people this is them. They're still blossoming. Because Vinnie Jones has really fine-tuned his comedic persona. I really liked him in the TV show Gallivant, and I've seen him in other things. He's really fine-tuned this level of this self-awareness, this comedic persona of being like a hard man, but also he's kind of a softie underneath it all. I haven't seen him in Eurotrip, so maybe that's his peak. But he's really nailing it, and like we said, Channing Tatum still getting there at this period of time. Like, I didn't realize he was a model, actually, because again, I don't know much about the guy. I just know his name's Channing Tatum, which sounds like an alias name, like sounds like a witness protection name.
Yeah, it sounds like two last names.
It sounds like two last names. It sounds like Tatum is actually like a little bit off from Tantrum. Channing Tantrum is his like alter ego. He's villain.
And he holds back his emotions in his films.
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
To play against the tantrum.
See, I thought he was a dancing guy because he did the Step Up movies and Magic Mike and
he was a stripper. We know that.
He was a stripper in real life?
Isn't that the whole thing with Magic Mike? Like, it was inspired by the fact that he was a...
Oh, I didn't realize... Like, I just know the movie for it being a movie. I didn't... Like, again, you can tell me literally any fact about Channing Tatum and I'll have to take your word on it.
He's my mum.
Well, that makes sense. There was a Polish character in this movie.
Was it?
Yeah, the fat kid that was not allowed on the team by Vinnie Jones.
Oh, did he have a Polish name?
I think so. He had a ski, so I just immediately assumed he was Polish.
So he's your cousin.
We're bros.
Long lost cousin. Bro, I mean.
I'm trying to think what else. There were some gags that didn't land. Like, one gag that really fell flat for me, and I don't know about you, because this is a gag on paper I could see working for you, but for me, on paper, it doesn't even work, which is she's waiting for Channing Tatum outside, and she sees a silhouette, and she's talking about it like it's Channing Tatum, then it just happens to be, like, the gardener guy, and he's like, I gotta turn on the sprinklers. That fell flat for me. I didn't find that funny. I don't know how you felt about that.
I mean, I saw it coming. The thing that threw me off was like how deep the guy's voice was.
Yeah, I guess I didn't see it coming because there was no setup. Like, we'd never met that guy before.
Well, I mean, I didn't think that it was a gardener. I just thought like, oh, that's not Channing Tatum.
No, I knew it wasn't going to be Channing Tatum either, but usually there would be a setup.
Oh, it'd be like the creepy guy looking for the spider or something.
Yeah, or like it would be a character that we have at least seen on screen before. Or something, but it just happened to be a random out of nowhere gardener guy, and I'm like, I don't know, it didn't work for me. Like, I'm trying to think what else to say about She's the Man. Oh, talk about soccer stuff. I talked to my father beforehand, because as I've talked about on the show before, he's a soccer expert. We talked about this on Bend It Like Beckham, and we talked about this on Thunderpants, and we talked about this on a bunch of ones. I asked him about all these soccer things, and it seems like the movie is pretty decent with it. Obviously, there's going to be some sensationalized things, like the fact that no one got red carded when they all got into a fight, or the fact that the goalkeeper guy could like openly slag off and be disrespectful and rude and whatnot when doing the penalty. And of course the fact that she could play once she was revealed to be a girl, and not just because she's revealed to be a girl, the fact that she could play even though she's not registered as a player. That wouldn't happen. Like, that's Hollywood.
Or a student even.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, she's not a student, she's not registered. If she got injured, there would be a whole fucking thing. They could play it if they forfeited the game and the other team got like, it would be a 3-0. That's what would happen. It would be like forfeit 3-0 for this team. And
I have a counter to all this, by the way.
And they just play friendly or whatever afterwards. But like, she's not registered.
Mm-hmm.
What's your counter?
You going to tell all that to Vinnie Jones? And see if that flies?
I said that exact same thing to my father. I said, well, if Vinnie Jones came up to you, ripped up the rule book, and shoved it in your hand and said, "We're playing," you would play. And my dad just said, yeah, but the game would be a forfeit, though. Vinny, and he said, and Vinny knows that.
What matters is what we see with our eyes, not what we read or hear about with our ears.
Did you recognize who the coach of the other team was? The one who didn't let them have a girls' team, even though they had enough players for a girls' team? I literally counted how many girls they were, and they had more than 7, which is enough, by the way. You need a minimum.
It felt like they had enough.
You need a minimum of 7 on the field. So maybe they wouldn't allow them if they didn't have, like, a max of 12 to 6. Like, if they didn't have at least, say, you want, like, minimum, like, for a proper team, you want at least 12. But you can just have 7. But, like, and usually you want anywhere from 15 to, like, 16 or 18. But they had enough girls for a team. But did you recognize the coach?
Good question. The answer is I didn't, but he seemed really familiar.
He played Jesus in Reefer Madness, the movie musical, because this is directed by the same director of that.
Right, that's exactly who he was. Yeah, I did read the trivia. They mentioned that a lot of the cheerleaders were from that movie.
Mm-hmm. Listen to Jesus, Jimmy. If people have not watched Reefer Madness, the movie musical, you got to get on that, people. I showed that to Bartek, I want to say last year, and you were blown away.
It was on your birthday, yeah, it was really good.
Because, sometimes I'm like, Bartek's hard to pick with some of these things, especially if it's a musical. I don't know why. Even though you do like musicals, or at least you've grown up with enough of them. You like Grease, which is like the worst musical of all time, but whatever. There's no Grease 2. But I was like, I don't know if you were like Reef Madness, but you did, you loved it, and when Jesus turned up, you lost your shit. Because you and I
I've listened to that song, a few times.
You and I specifically understood pretty much all of the references as well, because there's a lot of good biblical references. Best line in that movie is right up there in the Jesus scene is I'm Jean Novak, no Christian martyr, works it harder. That's a great line. I use that line a lot. No Christian martyr, works it harder. Or the classic, you rock, Jesus. So that was Jesus. And I found it very distracting that Jesus was taller than Vinnie Jones. Vinnie Jones is like yelling at him but the guy's taller than Vinnie Jones. And Vinnie Jones isn't like the shortest dude in the world. I think of him as a pretty big guy, but this guy was bigger than fucking Vinnie Jones. Who
has the bigger aura?
He had a great joke though, where Vinnie Jones was tapping him on the chest, and he's like, "Okay, that's gonna bruise, but whatever."
Yeah.
You got your
little pathetic thing.
You got your joke in there, Jesus. I'm gonna just call him Jesus, by the way. I know the actor's name is Robert something, but he's Jesus. Apparently, he was the dad in Drake and Josh, or whatever. Drake and Josh, not Drake and Josh. In whatever the show is where they live in a hotel. I don't know, some Nickelodeon show. Someone's listening right now, and they're like, "How dare you? That's a great show."
I should look into that, because the dad in not Big Fat Lie, in Drake and Josh was a bit more of a weight. So no, I'd be curious. Maybe I've seen that show.
Whatever the show is, there's a show where they live in a hotel, and their dad's a rock and roll star. He's only in a few episodes. It's
live in a hotel.
I want to say The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if that was on Nickelodeon or not, but I haven't really
Disney,
seen it
maybe?
much.
One of those.
Yeah.
He was their dad. He was their rock and roll dad. He's only in a few episodes, but there you go, people. Is there anything else you want to talk about with She's the Man?
I think we covered it all, Ryan.
Well, final thoughts?
Final thoughts?
Wrap up?
It was better than I was expecting, and I think that if you sit down and watch it, you'll overall have a good time. There will be things that probably won't work for you, but there will be plenty of things that do work. We've got some pretty good actors that deliver some decent zingers at times, and yeah, give it a watch if it sounds like it interests you, and if you're a teenage girl, you'll be quoting it along with many other things.
It is true. I did enjoy the film. I will say it can be a little cringy at times because it really wants to lean into that forced teenage character drama. But as I said, I feel like these will smooth over time with my own rewatching. I watched this with my wife who had seen this movie before, and those moments still make her cringe. She still put her hands over her face and was like, I think for me, this movie is an unappreciated masterpiece, and as with some of those, a multiple viewing session, especially in a quick succession of time, really smooths these things out. But upon just watching it, I just watched it this morning, by the way, so I'm real fresh on watching it. And I think that this movie has a lot more going for it than maybe some people give it for. But at the same time, there were moments where I said, and I do feel, I hate this. I hate this delivery. I hate this thing. I didn't like how, like I've talked about before, I don't like character betrayals, and I felt like the Olivia character, it felt like a bit of a character betrayal, even though in context it is a deliberate character flip via the character themselves. Yeah. I felt like they didn't really follow through. In the end, she just gets with her brother, and it just kind of feels like, oh, okay, but you know her brother's not the same guy that you fell in love with, right? Like...
Yeah, I think they tried to play it off as like, oh, she fell in love with his lyrics, but yeah, I didn't buy it either.
But I didn't buy it, because her brother was a flake. He was a dick. And that's what she didn't like. She didn't like guys being douchey dicks. So, I don't know. I like that. But yeah, this film's worth watching. It is very fun. And I get the appeal of Amanda Bynes even more. And, you know, I feel the loss that many people have with what happened to her and what has happened to her. And that she didn't get to sustain as a comedic force. But this film, She's the Man... fun. Could have used more soccer, but it was fun. It isn't Bend It Like Beckham, but it is fun. It's no Thunderpants, but it is fun.
So over the phone, it sounded like you said it could have used a bit more fucker.
It could have used more fucking, though. This.
Well, it had tampons.
It did have what? I'm sorry.
Yeah, why did I say that? Why did I say that? I don't know.
Do you want to rethink that?
Ryan, you see, in comedy, you have to have a bit of shamelessness.
Yeah, exactly. So, Bartek, next episode, It is your pick. So, regale us with your selection. And can I just ask before you do that, last time when we were at this road, so not the last selection, but the one before, you were tossing up between two. Is this the other one that you were tossing up between, the one you're going to reference now?
It is one of the ones that I was tossing up between. I was tossing up between three this time, but I'm still not picking that one. I'm saving it for later.
Okay.
This time I would like to cover the film Castaway.
Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks. We haven't talked about him yet.
No. Tom Hanks has not appeared on the podcast, has he?
No, he hasn't.
Tom, you're here. Come back to Australia. Last time you were here, it was a wonderful experience for you. Come back.
We heard you stayed a while.
We heard you and your wife, Rita Wilson, or as I like to call her, damn you, Howard.
We're trying to be fair. We've talked about Rita Wilson. We have to talk about her less popular husband.
And I like that you chose Castaway. Castaway is a great film, and it's one I've only seen a couple of times. It's one good pick, Bartek. So, listening people, we'll be talking about the Tom Hanks, Robert Zemeckis classic Castaway. So do watch that in the meantime, because next episode we will be discussing it in depth. Mm-hmm. Bartek, a pleasure as always. Could you please tell the listening people where they can find us on the internet, social medias, and our email? Because, hey, listening people, like I said at the start, you can email us with your own suggestions. It's not just Jono. Jono's not the only one. Bartek's friend Jono isn't the only one who can just come on here and be like, I want She's the Man, for no real explicable reason that we can find.
He's a teenage girl at heart.
Aren't we all?
Yes, I can tell everyone, because it's very easy. If you want to email us, the email address is spitandpolished@gmail.com. That's spitandpolished@gmail.com. You can email us questions, suggestions, anything else that rhymes with that. In terms of finding episodes of this podcast, which I'm sure if you're listening to this you already have, you can search on whatever that platform is. It could be YouTube, where we are on the channel Spit and Polish. It could be on Podbean, Spit and Polish Presents. You can also find us on websites such as
Spotify.
iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. There's a lot of them.
The
if you even
Spanish
just Google
one,
us,
iVox.
the Spanish one. Is that what it was called? iVox?
I'm pretty sure because I'm guessing that's the case because that's the one I'm aware of. That I know that our friends the Contrarians, they have the guy who did their music, I want to say, or their thing. He has a podcast that's entirely in a different language, and I think it's on that one.
All right, yeah. The last time I checked it didn't have everything, but also last time I checked it was over a year ago. And if you want to contact us in a way that isn't through email, you can also find us on Facebook at Spit and Polish Presents and Twitter at Spit Polish Pre.
We're always posting some fun things on there, engaging in conversations, and if you're lucky, you might see Bartek's mum talking to us on there, giving comments, letting us know that she likes a song that a movie's called after, or that Terminator is a classic. Wonderful stuff. Bartek, thanking you very much. Listening people, remember as always to be kind to each other, and that she's the man.
She's the man. I saw it in the title.
She's the man now, dog.